We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the podcast about Red Dwarf on the We Made This podcast network. My name's Mark Adams and I am your host for this episode. And with me at this time is Carl Bryan. Hello.
Hello there, Mark.
And also we've got Matt Latham with us. Hello, Matt.
I'm just waiting for my wine. Has anyone got any? I mean, I've been waiting for ages.
I wouldn't recommend it.
You sure? What would you recommend?
None of it is quite overpriced.
Ah, okay.
For goodness sake, we're doing episode 2 of Crime Traveller, and you're kind of sort of badly quoting it in that very silly entrance.
How dare you mock my pure acting talent?
Okay. But yeah, we had a lovely time last week doing Crime Traveller episode 1. And we're doing...
Once.
What?
I played a tree once, damn it.
What? Stop interrupting me on my flow. I'm introducing the show and you never let me do it professionally. Even when we're not doing episodes on Red Dwarf, you're like, distraction shit. What?
Nothing.
Right, yeah. Crime Traveller episode 2. We discussed Crime Traveller and how much fun it is on the last episode, so I propose we just go straight in to the episode.
Yeah.
A Death in the Family.
Mm-hmm.
A Death in the Family was first broadcast on the 8th of March 1997, just after Red Dwarf Series 7 had finished. And the opening scene is Slade with Holly, who's gone to the bank for a loan to fund her experiments. Slade spots someone fishy as she talks to a bank clerk that patronises her and asks her about her spending on electronics. Holly works out she ain't getting anything, and she sasses the woman whose name is Bev. And I have to say, I completely approve of just not sitting there and getting fucking owned by some desk bastard. Not that I've had the same issue myself. Cunts.
No, it's good that, she just completely... She's being nice to them, as anybody does when they go looking for either an overdraft extension or a loan. But, yeah, when she realises that there's nothing to it, she's like, I'm not taking your shit, Bev. Although it is interesting to see how much the electrical items she's buying cost.
Yeah. I think they're trying to establish that she's a strong woman here and won't take bullshit. And I guess that's kind of important after we've already established how 90s smooth, slightly misogynistic Slade is. So, yeah, good.
I also quite appreciate that the series is automatically going to think, okay, what questions are the annoying people on the internet going to be asking in 25 years' time? Wait a second. It'll be like, how the hell can they afford that apartment in Friends? How the hell could she afford all these pieces of equipment and stuff? And I quite like the fact that in the second episode, the question of affording to pay for parts for the machine is kind of answered, or at least set up and explored. And I think last week, Carl, you said that quite a few episodes seem to be on the trail of them to try and make money or get money. And you can kind of see that for as intelligent and as smart as Holly is, when it comes to finances, she's not.
Yeah, it's all on the machine.
Yeah.
And I think, looking at it, I mean, this shows sort of the difference between now and 1997. I think the most expensive thing when you saw the statement briefly, was the most expensive thing was about 225 quid. Which, thinking about it now, is like, I could build a time machine in here. Yes.
You could build a time machine so you could then travel back in time so you could afford the equipment to build the time machine.
Yeah.
It'll pass an afternoon, Mark, let's be honest. I'd tell myself, as of recording, we're in the middle of a heat wave. I could tell myself to go and buy an extra fan.
I'll probably
You
buy like
could.
a portable air conditioning unit.
Oh, God, yeah. God.
But no, I do like how strong a character Holly is. We touched on it in the last episode, how she could have basically just been exposition for the hero guy, but she's got more to her than that. And it's, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, in this episode as well, it's made very clear she knows what Slade is. There's a few shots of her where she's just despairing at how gung-ho he is. Like, they break into the house later on using the gun, and she's just like, oh, for goodness sake. You know, it's a bit like when they brought James Bond back and they were making lots of fun of, like, you're an antique, you're a dinosaur from a bygone era. It's a bit like that, but as the series goes on, as I think I've said before, we actually learn there's a bit more to Slade than that. But yes, there is the 90s loaded magazine, woi oi, you know, that kind of sort of thing going on there a bit. I mean, as anybody wearing that jacket would have the confidence that he has.
I mean, we have discussed how very, very impressive that jacket is.
I want one.
Yeah. I bet Michael French still has it.
So here's a question for you, Carl. Do you want Slade's jacket or a Red Dwarf bomber jacket more?
Oh, Slade's jacket.
Wow. For those of you that didn't listen to the Smegazine episodes, we did kind of fixate on the Red Dwarf jackets that you could purchase in the 90s with leather sleeves.
Yeah, the leather sleeves thing. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I had a leather, I mean, I think as we all did going through slightly gothy metal phase, I had a leather trench coat at one point, and it was the hottest thing I ever chose to wear. But I thought I looked so cool. But yeah, looking back now, I would not have done that again.
No. Anyway, Slade stops a bank robber with his own gun to his head as he attempts a robbery with a gun. They take the robber back to the station, and Holly says she's resigning and getting an academic job.
Okay, yeah, he's using his own gun in the bank, but I do really kind of like how this kind of reestablishes Slade's kind of maverick, kind of quick-witty intelligence to read a situation. So if you've not watched the first episode, you get a good impression of how efficient Slade can be, mixed in with a kind of recklessness, and it's also kind of, I quite like the kind of wittiness of him just writing the. Is it "So have I" written on the piece of paper after?
He writes "snap."
Snap. That's it.
Yeah.
I do quite like how kind of how much character there is in that bit. It's nice and it's nice and unique, I think.
Yeah. And it also goes to show he doesn't need the time machine. He is a good cop.
But he's still a British cop with a gun that he uses like a toy. And yeah, moving on. They take the robber back to the station, and Holly says that she's resigning and going to get an academic job. She says she hates it and she's underpaid. The robber is taken off Slade's hands, and he quibbles about whether or not it's a robbery or an attempted robbery. Slade asks if she has any rich relatives, and she queries if she should murder them. And I'm like, okay. I think I find the portentousness a little bit, and it does it quite often in this series, that there's like what looks like it might be a throwaway line that then kind of is very thematic for that specific episode, and it does it quite a lot in this series. And for me, having watched the entire series now, I do feel like this would maybe even be reduced to young adult fiction these days rather than for adults on a Saturday night. Or was this aimed at grown-ups, or was it aimed at like family stuff? I'm not really sure.
I'm pretty sure it was like 9 p.m. on a Saturday evening.
Oh, I thought it was earlier than that. I remember it being like 8 o'clock on a Saturday, because you've got Michael French, who, like we said, they are riding high on. You don't want to put him on after the Watershed. I'm sure this was like the 7:30, 8 o'clock, like prime time Saturday night thing.
I remember it being on Saturdays, but I don't particularly remember it being aimed as like the family show. But yeah, do you know what I mean, though? It does feel like sometimes it nudges towards being kiddie.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, you've got the time travel aspect. That's going to bring the kid. Maybe that's the thing. It's aimed for the whole family. It's got the cop drama stuff, for the dads. It's got the time travel aspect for the kids, and it's got Michael French for the mums.
Okay. So they're both called into Grisham's office, and there's been a poisoning in a posh restaurant using cyanide. The victim, Mary Chandler, turns out is Holly's rich aunt. Immediately after Holly said, "Oh, should I murder a rich relative?" And the last time she saw her was at her uncle's funeral a year ago. Grisham says that for impartiality, that she will have to handle it with Morris as her partner.
Not before thoroughly cutting down Nikki.
She does. Poor Nikki.
It kind of explains, though, because you do wonder a bit like, how is Nikki a detective? And then she says, what's it, he's a graduate trainee? And something like that. And it's like, that makes more sense. It says a lot about that police department if Nikki's managed to work his way up the ranks. But yeah, the fact he's a graduate trainee, I can imagine a spin-off with Nikki as like a PC on the beat would be quite fun.
Yeah, I think, can we just take this moment to just appreciate Sue Johnston?
Oh yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's not much of a role at the moment. I can't remember what happened, if she gets more than stereotypical police chief for the next 6 episodes. But I think at the time, must have been a get. Because this was before the royal family, and I think, but she was on Brookside for 8 years. So she was really known for being, I think she was Sheila. I think it was Sheila, wasn't it? Because I know our on-screen husband was Ricky Tomlinson in Brookside.
And the pair of them, it was sort of like they would get the big storylines as well.
Yeah.
And because they knew that they were the actors to carry it off. It's the thing, it's not stunt casting, it's like, right, we need somebody who can, be this powerful thing. It's like, well, let's get, I mean, in the same way, the whole thing's a bit like that. Let's get Sue Johnston to be the powerful captain. I mean, the guy who plays Nicky is a stage actor. He's been a stage actor for donkey's years. He still is now. So that you get the feeling that, yeah, people do know him from Chronicles of Narnia back in the day, but he could do, pretty much anything. And you get that in the guest stars as well. You always get good actors.
Because, I mean, she'd have been a name. I mean, I think there's a 7-year gap between Brookside and this. But I think I was quickly looking through Wikipedia, and she was in a show called Medics for like 3 years with Tom Baker, and then in a few other stuff. But nothing kind of jumps out as like a regular role until the royal family the year after. If this was a couple of years later and she'd been in the royal family and just doing the same role, I've got a feeling that she'd probably be written a lot differently.
What, you think a lot more comedically, or?
No, as in I think perhaps given slightly more oomph for the actress. So yeah, I think after Barbara Royal, I think that kind of raised her profile a bit more. So I think she'd been quite like almost 7 years off Brookside.
She's probably being regarded at this time in the career as more of a character actor.
Hmm.
And sort of like, right, we need somebody to play that. Because I've got a vague memory of Medics with Tom Baker.
But it's 2 big soap actors, isn't it?
Yeah.
With Michael French and her. So I think they were both big names. Michael French more so, but she's still a big name.
I mean, if you think about it, this was before the sort of HD explosion and the online sort of streaming explosion. So in this country, if you were a big soap actor, you were probably one of the most famous actors in the country at the time. And it is kind of one of my favourite tropes in show business of the soap actor who decides they're going off to do Hollywood or something like that, and then they never really go off and do anything. Martine McCutcheon syndrome.
I knew you were going to say Martine McCutcheon.
Leave Martine alone.
It was the moment, Mark. It was the perfect moment.
Oh, fuck's sake.
Smooth. Well done, Carl.
To be fair, I mean, like you get on the flip side though, it's quite interesting when the opposite happens and they make it massive. Like Idris Elba, for example, who started on Family Affairs on Channel 5. Sarah Lancashire, bringing her up again. She's currently now playing Julia Child in I think it's either HBO or Showtime show.
It's the same as, again, we've talked about Saran Jones. She started on Coronation Street, and now she's doing lots of stuff all over the shop. I mean, Michael French was kind of smart in doing this. He did David Wicks for 3 years. He probably got to the peak of, what they could possibly do with the character, and he left. And then I think this was the first thing he did. And then he went, into Holby City. And then I think he does pop back up in EastEnders a few times. And then he had another series called Born and Bred.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like the smarter actors, like, they will take risks, but they will try and consistently work. You know what I mean? Like Christopher Walken's always said he likes to wake up in the morning with a script in his hand. And that was his excuse for starring in some absolute rot over the years. But I think this is him sort of going, right, I'm at the peak of what I could do. Let's leave now. Don't kill me off. Let's see what's out there. And they offered him this. He got, this is cool because I'm a goodie. It's something different. It could take off because Doctor Who was very popular and then at the moment not currently on the air. And it wouldn't be for another 8 years. So this could be a thing that could run for a good few years and, then take me up to a higher level. And because he's not phoning it in, he's blatantly enjoying himself doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Slade and Holly discuss how close she was to her aunt, and she wasn't really, but she's still dismayed that it's Grisham and Morris on the case. The phone rings and she's called to a solicitor's office.
Who's really jolly.
Yeah. This solicitor tells her that she's getting half with someone called Alex Morton, who is her aunt's partner. The solicitor predicts there'll be $2 million, but Mary was going to change her will. Slade suggests that they go back to solve who killed her in tribute.
So, here's a question for you that kind of slightly bugged me throughout this episode. How long was that meeting with the solicitor? Because, as we find out, it must have been an absolutely very, very long meeting, which would then meant that neither of them would go back to work before heading back to use a time machine.
I don't think they'd have to head back to work because obviously the time machine means that they could then just bob in, do the time machine, and head straight back to work, surely. Or have I missed something?
Because there's the whole section later on, as we go through the episode, and neither of their current selves interact with any of the other characters who currently believe that Holly's guilty of murder. So where's the past Holly? Well, present Holly. Holly before the time machine.
Original Holly.
Yes. That must be a really long meeting that no one bothered, that they didn't realise that so basically there must be in that really long meeting while she's currently being under arrest, when she's under arrest and Slade's trying to prove innocence.
Yeah, it's all in the same day, isn't it? Because when Gresham arrests them, they said, I spoke to you, you said this morning. So, yeah, no, that's an interesting one. Where are they? And, yeah. Maybe it's the whole secret affair I keep saying is happening
Yes.
behind.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But the thing I thought about in that scene was how manipulative the main protagonist is. He wants another go on the time machine, regardless of what it's for, and he manipulates her feelings about a dead aunt. Again, there's a lot of stuff that he does where if you take a step back, you're like, come on, stop being a bellend.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's been a bellend and there's been Jeff Slade.
Yeah. Jeff Slade, bellend.
Fuck's sake.
Professional bellend.
If he's not a bellend, it's a really short show.
Oh, I know, but I don't know. The more I rewatch 90s stuff back with a critical eye, all the main characters that are male do a lot of unpleasant stuff that was considered perfectly normal at the time.
But isn't that like anti-hero stuff now? I mean, like, again, I brought up Jack Bauer as a joke last time, but Jack Bauer, like, does extremely horrific things for the greater good.
Yeah, 24, if you rewatch it, is incredibly right-wing.
I mean, you have it with things, stuff like Game of Thrones as well. No one in there is a saint.
No. I guess the reality is that characters are being portrayed as more realistic rather than kind of super altruistic. But yeah. They get to the machine and Holly points out that it's falling apart and costing lots of money. In fact, one of the things going wrong causes a massive power surge. Danny can fix it, but he's frustrated at the electric bill. There's also people stuck in the lift as well.
I did not realise this. I honestly thought at that point, because you can hear the people, I thought it was my neighbours next door.
Right.
I thought I was hearing people next door, but it turns out it's actually the people in the lift who will find out who they are later on.
See, this is the thing. I remember this at the time as well. Is it almost goes against because you recognise Sue Johnston's voice quite easily, I think, and you hear them sort of going, "Let me out, let me out," and it was weird. Yeah, that was kind of odd, but because it's kind of like that sounds like them. And it's like, but then it's that thing of I wonder how they got in there or why they're in there. I like it. I like Danny as well in this. The house veers from being quite modern to when you're like going down to the switch things from the 15th century. Huge levers, smoking levers as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It just feels really atmospheric, even if it makes no sense.
It's like the thing from a horror film, but it's not. It's flat in North London or wherever it is.
So the machine does work a second time, and they've got enough time to observe the lunch. They go to Mary's house, and Mary thinks that Slade is Holly's boyfriend. They correct her, but Slade asks to join her for lunch. She says no. Her new boyfriend arrives, and he's pretty fucking petulant. But she's really shitty to him as well.
Yeah, as soon as he walks in, you just think, sus, you're suspect. As soon as he walks in, I think it's the ears.
They're both really unlikable in this scene. They're both clearly being selfish, and their aims just happen to correlate. There's no love there at all.
They must just have really good angry sex. That's probably what it is.
Do you know, I haven't had good angry sex for a long time. Maybe I should.
Tweet in at Red Dwarf Pod on Twitter.
No. I might cut that bit. But
sign up to the Patreon, and if you're one of our top leveled,
fuck's sake. They establish that they're both really selfish in this relationship, but they get what they want out of it, and that he makes her feel young, and that she spoils him. He does at one point ask her if she's taken it, and she says yes. Holly considers trying to stop her from going to the lunch, but doesn't because of her belief that you can't change history when you go back into it. Slade questions her motives, and again, he's a bit of a bully, and she agrees to try and change history, even though she genuinely doesn't think that it's possible. Ugh. She's supposed to be really right. It just drives me around the bend because she's clearly an academic. She's supposed to be bright, and she knows that her theory is right, yet she gets kind of goaded by Jeff.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely, and that does happen. But it does kind of play into, if you put yourself in those shoes, if you're there going, no, the theory's right, you're still thinking, like, but that's my relative that's going to die, and I could do something about it.
I also think
you're probably walking on a bit of an emotional tightrope there.
I think the show also is trying to say, what if they do attempt to try and change history? So,
yeah,
because I think it was that, because the rules were there saying, like, oh, you can't really stop it. But then I think the show needs to try and have another episode. It does this episode of attempting to see what will happen if they do attempt to. But I do quite like the idea in time travel that fiction sometimes that you cannot change history. So the example I always say, like the time travel trope of let's go back in time and kill Hitler. Right. If time travel ever existed, the only time they would have succeeded would be when we know his death was. That's the only possible time. Yeah, that's the only possible time that any person traveling through time would have done that. So
Yeah.
So that what the history books say to it, and so they've either kept failing beforehand, but then was successful in that bunker. So that's how I often think about that. So like, if any event that they try to stop or change, they've already affected it. So like any kind of major event in history, if anyone tried to stop it, what we know, there could be a parallel universe of it. Something already happened. I'm drawing a complete blanket.
Yeah, because I mean that's the thing in it. Sort of, if when Hitler got killed was when a time traveler did it,
Yeah.
they in their reality it could be they'd have been living under Nazi regime for another 50 years longer than what we believe the war to ending be.
Mm-hmm.
That sentence was poor grammar, but I know what I mean.
So when Alex drops her off, she calls him to his face, her servant, and she's just a massive bellend to him. And it just feels wildly unethical that you would say that to your partner. I don't know.
They all vote Tory, you can guarantee.
Yeah, it's the dynasty thing, isn't it? It's the Joan Collins bitch.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Is you've got people coming out of that the 80s, big shoulder pads, huge hair, which this character does have. She's not the only one in this episode who has some huge hair. Yeah, and it's just that money is power and control is power, and I get what I want out of you, and you get what you want out of me, and that's it. It's a relic of a bygone age.
True. And also, while we're talking about wildly unethical things, Slade suggests preventing Aunt Mary from drinking wine and then proceeds to knock out a waiter who is completely innocent and then nick his clothes. That's the second catering staff that in as many episodes that he's bullied, clobbered, abused that have done nothing wrong.
Well, at least they use a comedic sound effect.
I mean, unless it's like they doesn't probably show up again. But you've seen these episodes a few more times than I have. Unless there's a whole running joke of Slade really not liking catering staff. That's probably something in season 2 where like revealing that that he got bullied by a busboy once.
Chef.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just Anthony Horowitz was there just when he was writing like waiters, bastards, all of them. Can't stand them.
So there is a very frosty group of people at the table, and she's been blackmailing all 3 of them. Holly pretends to be a health inspector, and she takes the name Miss Kenwood, and she asks to see the wine cellar. They don't have one. Slade, as a waiter, tells Mary that all the wine is overpriced or too dry, and she eventually demands Sancerre.
There's a little bit in this I quite liked, in that he's literally just put on a waiter's outfit and some glasses, but it's still blatantly him. But she doesn't figure that out, and it kind of ties back to when they first meet. She gets his name wrong, so she's forgetting him as soon as she's met him. So when this waiter's turned up, she's just not thought to think, hang on a minute, this is Jeff Slade.
Yeah, is it like also a nod to Superman as well, that glasses mean that no one can tell? Because funny enough, people recognise me with or without my specs.
In that case, the coat is definitely a cape.
I think it's it's the coat. The coat is the glasses. If Jeff Slade isn't wearing that jacket, he is just Keith Dagger.
Yeah, maybe.
For fuck's sake, Keith Dagger.
Maybe that's his big ploy. It's like, I'm going to wear a bright mustard yellow coat. No one will look at my face. They're all too busy staring at the coat, and that's how I can just slip by anybody completely unmolested.
Yeah. Slade swipes her wine glass and then checks the bottle before taking the bottle to her and giving her a fresh glass, the idea being that if he switches everything out, they won't be able to poison her. However, a wanky customer gets in his way while he's watching what's happening and he can't see what's going on. Mary still dies.
Considering how he was more than happy to knock out a waiter, you'd think he'd have at least have kneed this bloke in the balls.
Well, this bloke was obnoxious, so I'm not saying that if you're obnoxious, you deserve a knee to the balls, but he at least did something vaguely wrong, which all the waiter did was go out for a fag break.
Well, BBC trying to push over that anti-smoking agenda.
Maybe. They both flee, and Alex heads in and confirms the death. Slade and Holly can't work out how she was poisoned, and Slade breaks into Mary's house and tells Holly about the blackmail. Holly questions what she has on them and why she would need to blackmail considering she's got so much money. Slade asks what her uncle did, and Holly tells him he was an accountant. They look in his office and find files on the 3 others that were at the table: Amanda Hayes, Ian Carter, and Robert Blake. They think he was tax fiddling for them, and they decide to question them.
The main thing about it is when they break into the house, he uses the gun again. And this was one of my first bits where I noticed how good Chloe Annett is at doing the "oh, for God's sake" face.
She's good at that in Red Dwarf as well, though.
Yeah, maybe they saw some early rushes of Red Dwarf. Or maybe the other way around is like they saw that she's good, she'd be good at reacting to Robert Llewellyn. But yeah, no, the whole, this whole scene is pure exposition, isn't it, really? You see the bottle, you find out what the uncle did.
Also, it's like they're just leaving fingerprints everywhere, because doesn't that come back to play later on?
I don't know if it does. It can't help them.
Oh no, it's the fingerprints on the glass. Sorry, that's what I'm thinking of.
Ah, yes, the glass. Yeah.
They prepare to avoid themselves, but meet a flustered Ricky. Holly gets arrested for murdering her aunt. She's questioned by Grisham about how she turned up on her aunt's on the day that she was killed and had lied to Grisham. She hadn't lied, but they think she had because at the time she had, etc. They also know about the Miss Kenwood thing, placing her at the scene, and her fingerprints are on the wine glass. And what I really like about this is she's accidentally framed herself, which puts a really interesting twist on someone being framed in a crime drama. It's really clever, and it's super thematic for the kind of smush of time travel and crime drama. I sat through that scene nodding and going, "Well played, sir."
Yeah, it's really good. It's quite fun to watch Chloe Annett's performance as well, because the performance is basically, I'm buggered and I know I am.
Yeah.
And I've caused it.
I've caused it and I can't explain it. Like, if I try and explain it, they will lock me up and throw away the key because they'll think I've gone completely haywire.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
I also quite like that again, as we were saying, as probably alluded to in the last week, was that this episode seems to want to make sure that we as an audience know that this again isn't the Michael French vehicle, that Chloe Annett is practically equal billing, or deservedly is supposed to be seen as an equal. So it's not so Slade's not just the de facto lead character, it's the 2 of them that are supposed to be the focal central point. And so it's not gonna be Jeff Slade. So, well, it eventually does go to Jeff Slade. Jeff Slade saves the day, but the focus of the episode is to establish a lot more on Holly as a character, how she reacts to things, and that she is the kind of MacGuffin for the episode, and that it's a her focus episode rather than the Slade one. And I do appreciate that this again is highlighting, is filling out more of her character, to the fact that she's not lying, that she's not about her, and how she reacts to Grisham's questions is like, yeah, that is me, but I didn't kill her. Yeah, you're right, but I didn't kill her. And yeah, it's just good to see the show kind of making sure it elevates Annett to remind you that she's also another main character.
Yeah, she's not the sidekick.
Yeah.
Which I think gets reflected when you look at like the DVDs and stuff like that. She is on there equal. I think the complete series is like it's split in three with the title down the middle and her head on one side and his head on the other.
That's right.
She's even got top billing. I think they go alphabetical. So it's really good. And yeah, this scene's probably one of the best because, like I say, I can't get out of it. She almost, because to them, she seems almost flippant. She's like, I didn't do it. But so we know that she's just like, there's nothing I can say.
She's put in the cells and has to give up all her stuff, including the watch.
Dun, dun, dun.
Indeed. She's put next to the robber from earlier, and she's upset with Slade and panics about getting stuck there and ending up in an infinity loop. Slade promises to solve it.
You know what kind of reminds me of, at times, the TV show Sliders, when they used the... I can't remember, was it just the slider machine handling? I can't remember what the exact name of the Gookie was, but a couple of episodes of that, they had them lose that or have to try and either fix it or repair it. And like when that timer went off, they wouldn't have been able to advance to the next parallel universe. So that kind of reminded me of like, okay, we need to add a complication of removing the device needed to also get back. So you can't just turn up in the room; you have to have that element to it. And the show kind of working out, okay, if we start messing around with the fact that they need this MacGuffin to get back in, then we've added another layer of complication to the premise stuff. And yeah, again, I quite like the show working that out very early. It's very similar to episodes of Quantum Leap, where the ones that everyone remembers are the ones where it breaks the usual format.
Yeah. Yes. The one I always talk about, because it was the most memorable to me, was when he jumped into a chimp and did a spin kick. It is fixed point in my brain. One of the highlights of television for me. But it's a terrible, terrible episode. But I just remember seeing Scott Bakula in a nappy for an entire episode and then did a spin kick as a chimp.
Yeah. The more memorable, and I think some other episodes where they kind of changed the disc, or that they tweak with the format as for an added complication, are the more memorable ones. And this show's doing that now, second episode. And from what I remember, it does spin, it does tweak, and does interesting things with that premise throughout this series. So it's not just them going back to solve a murder. There's an added complication as well, and I quite like that they do that this early.
Yeah, I mean, this scene for me, their performances in this scene are both really good. Chloe Annett comes across as genuinely terrified, with the eyes filling up and everything. Like, this is the worst fear she has, is being stuck in the loop of infinity like her father. And, you know, she's welling up, she's trying to... And also, Michael French is playing it almost a bit like he's trying to be flippant, like, oh no, calm down. But as they keep talking, you can tell that he's bricking it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he's trying to hold it together. Well, to me anyway, he appears to be trying to hold it together for Holly, and he's going to get them out of this because he knows it's his fault as well.
Yeah. So off he goes, and his first call is to Blake, who is a dentist. And Blake confirms to him that he was being blackmailed and about the accounts. And Slade asks him who did it. He blames Amanda, as she organised the lunch. This is the start of almost like a chase, in a weird way. It made me feel like a chase where you go to it's almost, do you know what? It reminded me of like a treasure hunt. You go here, you get a clue. You go to the next one, you get a clue. You go to the next one, you get a clue.
I was going to say it reminded me of like those full motion video games. We used to visit people and ask them questions and play a video. Well, I'm fine, but so and so was looking a bit shifty.
Contradiction, like the video game contradiction.
Really good game. Yeah.
But what it reminded me of is that it reminded me very much of procedural police dramas from the US, where you go to, we saw this one, and you go, flashy transition to, I saw so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. But they went and speaking to so-and-so, flashy transition to, are you so-and-so? Yes. But they were, blah, 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 blah. But then you got to go and speak to Thingamabob, right, transition, are you Thingamabob? Yes, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so it's that kind of like A to B to C to D to E kind of structure for this next bit.
There's good like reaction things from Michael French as well. There's in the scene in the dentist where the dentist is explaining, it cuts to him and he's kind of sort of smiling, but you can see that he's taking it all in and like assembling a timeline in his brain of what's going on. It's very British as well. It's like it's not like, oh, so and so who runs the tattoo parlor like it would be in like NCIS. It's no, so and so's a dentist, the other one's at a book signing, and the third one runs a chemical company.
You're absolutely right.
You're going from the kind of like the mundane kind of like traditional, oh yeah, he's a dentist, to oh yeah, she's like a kind of semi-successful novel writer, to owner of a chemical company that could easily generate the poison needed to kill the person.
Oh, and you know that because all the bottles behind him have labels on that say poison with a skull and crossbones on them.
Yeah. I mean, you've basically covered the next two scenes, but there was something in between where the robber's really chatty and it really is really off-putting for Holly. And as much as it was filler, it did amuse me.
This is the thing. There's got to be some comic relief, I think, because otherwise it's a very heavy episode.
But I do quite like that the filler scene is basically due to events that were caused by the main characters. So that robber's there because of Slade, and it's there to create a kind of counterpoint for Holly's kind of mood, and to eventually have Molly do another of a couple of Slade-like questionable moral things later on as well.
Yeah. So very quickly at the book signing, Amanda points out that Ian owns a company that could produce the poison. So he goes to Ian, and Ian shows him his system for dangerous chemicals, and then he tells him that Mary invested unwisely. He queries how he could have done it without being seen, and the others had just as much of a motive as he did. So it does seem to end on a stalemate for Slade.
They're all, in their own way, the actors that they picked, especially the guy who runs the chemical thing. It's like, oh, it could be you. And then it's like, well, no, it couldn't be you. And it's like, oh, shit. It's like, well, who is it then? It's good because you think you're going to get an answer and you don't get the answer.
Nikki brings Holly some food and she knees him in the balls and escapes. She has to let the robber out after he threatens to raise the alarm.
Poor Nikki.
I know.
She really tries to get him to come round to her way of thinking before she just knees him in the dick.
I do wonder how many times they should actually be fired.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even when she's proved that she was innocent, she is not innocent of kneeing Nikki in the dick.
Yeah. She breaks out of prison, assaulting a police officer, and releases another prisoner while she does it. Yeah. And the food, do you see the food? It smacked so hard to me of like, right, what have we got? Oh, no one's really going to know. Just give her this. It's literally a plate of beans. That's it. In prison, I think it had little sausages in it, which, obviously she's a member of the team, so she gets a bit more of a benefit. But it's just a plate of beans, not even a bowl.
No toast.
No toast.
No toast. What is this, prison?
Exactly. But poor Nikki. She gives him. Without sounding too carry on. She gives him one, doesn't she? She really does. Yeah,
quite.
Yeah.
Slade questions Alex about the will change, and he says that she was removing Holly. He asks what he was talking about when he asked Mary earlier if she'd taken it, and he says it was a letter.
Yeah, he's just so suspect. It's quite good, by the way. You go around all the other people, like, oh, it must be them, and then you come back to the other half, and you're like, actually, it's probably him.
Yeah, it does feel like it was quite obvious, this one. I never get who was the killer in Poirot, but I did very, very early on work out, it's going to be him, innit?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a friend of the show, Malachi J. Matthews, is very good at it as well. I was watching an episode of Midsummer Murders at his house, and I had to leave before it was over. and he guessed it, and I had to go home and find the episode online to watch it, and he was right, and all I could go was a bastard.
Holly avoids Morris relatively easily. The robber does not avoid Grisham and gets caught in the ladies.
Look, Sue Johnston, she knows, I don't have a line, I've got to give good eyebrows.
She does give good eyebrows.
Yeah, it's quite fun as well, because it does and it doesn't get Holly off the hook. Like,
yeah,
I'd like to think that he was nice enough to, because he comes across as kind of a nice guy, even though he's trying to rob a bank, but that he wouldn't drop her in it, that he let her out, that she let him out. Also, I just love the fact that this is Morris showing somebody round and like coming across as like, yeah, I'm like Detective Big Balls here, and a prisoner is just walking straight past him.
Well, he also says that he's really observant, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And that's how you get promoted. Brilliant. Morris is just pure comedy. There's no character there. There's just an idiot for lols, and I'm not mad.
No, he takes a lot of pleasure, I found, when they lock Holly up. He really seems to be enjoying it. Which makes me kind of think that he tried it on with her once and she knocked him back, and he's held it against her ever since.
Again, it's Ray from Life on Mars, even though, again, this is before Life on Mars.
He's a bit like Rimmer, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually,
so what we're saying is Life on Mars really ripped off Crime Traveller.
Yeah, clearly. Holly sneaks a watch back from behind the guard's back, and then the 1 hour alarm on it goes off, alerting him anyway.
No, so last week I said about the establishment of the alarm and how that would play off earlier. Now, they don't mention that alarm, do they, in this episode before this moment?
No.
So if you'd not watched last week, then you're like, oh, the watch has gone off. But watching it, this one after the other one, it's quite a nice setup. That this will beep, and then that pays off in a completely different episode, and there's a bit of consistency there, and I quite like the fact that going off adds an extra stake to the peril that Holly's in, and I really quite appreciate that. I thought that was pretty well done, that it didn't kind of forcibly remind the audience that it's there.
She didn't have to mention it at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. I think also Chloe Annett's I'm really, really scared and panicking acting was really good during this scene as well. I think that was worth noting too. And then what I really like is that alarm goes off, and then immediately the alarm in the station goes off, and it sends the guard the other way, and he runs in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and she nicks a pair of keys and runs out, and it was such a 90s thing for me that it was kind of refreshing when I realised she doesn't just press the key fob and the car goes beep beep, and she knows which one it is. She has to go looking for the actual car.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I noticed that, where she actually had to put the key in the car door.
Yeah, and there's a 2CV parked in the garage for no reason, and as soon as she comes running out with the key, it's like, please be the 2CV. Please be the 2CV. Just do a chase at a Citroen 2CV.
I always wanted a 2CV. I never got one. But yeah, she does nick a car, and then she's pursued by panda cars. Holly then smashes head on with Slade. And neither of them have whiplash or anything. They both get out the car and argue. He tells her that she didn't need to escape. She says they have 34 minutes left and that they can't convince them in that amount of time. He agrees, and they leg it towards her flat.
I like the fact that he's obviously, because he's a detective who does things not by the book and by his way, that he gets... Maverick! He gets out of the car like he's crashed headlong a dozen times. She gets out of the car like she's genuinely hurt herself. She's got that like sort of like she looks like almost there's a bit of despair in there as well, and I thought that was quite good for sort of seeing the difference, and the fact she starts hitting him because he's just like, it's gonna be fine, and she's like, it's not gonna be fine. She just starts hitting him. It's like she's finally hit the point. It's only the second episode.
Brilliant. Ricky and Grisham are in a car together, and the radio tells her Holly's location, which we already know is her home. But Grisham immediately clocks that. Slade and Holly run, and Holly doesn't think that they'll make it. And this is made even more unlikely when they encounter a Rottweiler. Now, the Rottweiler thing. Rottweilers aren't anything like their rep that they had in the 90s, because Rottweilers were horribly abused and got a completely wrong rep. I mean, right, if someone cut off a part of you to make you look prettier, how do you think that would do for your temperament? You know, in the 90s, it was standard practice to dock a Rottweiler's tail, to the point where, as a kid, I assumed that all Rottweilers had stubby little tails from birth. Not true. It's mutilation. And Rottweilers have got less of this rep now because they're treated better. And it just really made me feel like we'd hit some 90s ick, even though...
Yeah, I think... I mean, it's a broad stroke, isn't it? You look at a Rottweiler, especially back then, you look at a Rottweiler and you think, right, well, you're not going to get past that. I mean, they could have done it with other dogs. They could have done it with an Alsatian or something like that. But a Rottweiler gets that... It's only going to be for a few seconds on camera. So I can imagine that will give that primal thing of, oh, they're shagged.
Well, the thing is, though, if it was a poodle, would the scene be effective?
Well, it depends on whether it was one of those massive poodles. They scare the shit out of me.
I mean,
Or Chihuahua.
I think it shows the difference between us that you noticed the dog, and it was in this scene when they're climbing down off the bins that I was actually going, I never noticed how nice that waistcoat is that Chloe Annett's wearing.
No, it's just a pet peeve of mine that Rottweilers got this reputation in the 90s because they were frankly almost universally mistreated. And this just highlighted how 90s this was to me, that was the stereotype of the time, of the, you know, the bad dog. We don't have that anymore. German Shepherds aren't seen like that, and Rottweilers aren't seen like that. There's no real bad dog breed anymore.
But I think
just bad owners, you know?
it does, though, lead to what I think is a really kind of good, subtle sight gag where you see him running and it's very clear that Slade's trouser leg is ripped to shreds.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is actually a pretty good sight gag.
Yeah, it is a good gag because you kind of hear that it's in the bin before you realise what's happened. And yeah, you hear that because it attacks Morris, which is a thoroughly satisfying moment.
Yes. True, because Grisham tells Morris not to let them double back. And when he checks the bin, the dog's in it. And good. I mean, if we're going to have a Rottweiler stereotype, at least he's biting the right bell end.
Yeah, exactly.
Bite your right bell end.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gag, isn't it? The fact that they're almost quite jolly. Holly seems to be enjoying the fact that Slade had his trouser leg completely destroyed. He's like, well, if we are going to get trapped in a loop of infinity, at least, you know, you got completely messed up a little bit.
Yeah, and when they do get back, it's his trouser leg's fine. So, you know, it's the same as a person, isn't it? Yeah. That his trousers were healed. Anyway, Grisham is at Holly's flat when they get there, and they're stumped. They then see the power cut and realise that it was Grisham stuck in the lift, and they can get back in time. And here's where I have a bit of a Matt moment, in as much as I question a flub or a continuity thing. And Grisham and co clearly hear the weird-ass time machine noises, but completely dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't ask about it. They don't even acknowledge it. They just kind of shrug their shoulders and get on. And I'm like, if I heard weird-ass noises that sounded science fiction-y, I'd be like, it's a fucking time machine. Or, well, you know what I mean, though.
Grisham does go, what's that?
And then shrugs the shoulders and doesn't care.
Yeah. The thing that makes me laugh is they open the door to them really casually and be like, hello, Chief, how are you? Any other cop show, they'd be ploughed to the ground the second the door opens.
Yeah.
And again, where are the original Holly and Slade.
Yeah.
Why didn't they get arrested?
Yeah, it's an odd one. I also like the fact that when they're in the lift, everyone's got a lighter or a match because all cops smoke.
Well, everyone in the 90s smoked, didn't they?
True. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Slade points out that he knows who killed Mary. And back at the station, he reveals that it's Alex. Alex was going to get cut from the will, not Holly. So he was actually talking about pills when he asked if Mary had taken it. He'd actually switched the contents of the pill and put the poison in, and then put the cyanide in her glass during the confusion of her death. Alex tries to escape after this is revealed, and it basically confirms his guilt.
Yeah. Also in the background is Morris with his arm in a sling and a thing over his eye, having been basically mutilated by that dog. And he's just leaning, looking. It is quite subtle acting by him because he's just leaning against the back wall, just looking like every movement he goes into is a bit painful. So he can't get comfortable.
And I think Morris is so fundamentally unlikable that wouldn't be funny to any other character.
Yeah. Especially seeing as when the guy gets up to escape, he runs straight into Morris's bad arm. I did enjoy the fact as well that it cut when he says, "Oh, I know who did it," and it cuts to Alex, the partner. He's doing the face scrunched up, like evil, like sort of face. It's like that's what you got cast for, because you can do a good like with the chins up and all that kind of thing. It's like that's it, because you can do a good. I'm calling my lawyer. You've got no evidence. Oh, bugger, you've got evidence. That kind of thing. That's just a good smarmy. Like I think we said in the previous issue. Like somewhere somehow he'd be a cabinet minister.
So, the final scene, Holly apologises to Nikki for kneeing him in the balls when he drops her off at the solicitor. Unfortunately, all that Mary left were debts.
Well, Nikki says that she doesn't have to apologise because it was only a light testicular blow.
Nobody wants any kind of testicular blow. What a lovely chap Nikki is.
Depends on the context of the word testicular blow.
Yeah.
See, I'm not into that.
Get yourself someone who will only deliver a light testicular blow.
There are 10, but they only deliver light testicular blows.
Yeah. Chat, flirt. She decides to stay with the police.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, obviously, if she left in the second episode, it would be a bit fun. But when they sort of admit that he gets her to admit that she'd miss him a little bit as they're sort of walking into the sunset. And again, this plies with my theory of in the script you could put, and then they go at it.
It does feel like just in this last scene that the relationship is quite like Kochanski and Lister.
Yeah. She's way too good for him, but there's something that keeps her around.
Yeah.
It's the jacket.
Yeah.
It is the jacket.
It's the jacket and the gun.
I am going to Google see if you can get that kind of jacket.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
He puts his arm around her as well, and they have a giggle. It's like, oh, he put her through a lot of hell.
Well, another episode that I just thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah. I've always loved stuff like Poirot, Murder, She Wrote, and that kind of thing. And I've always loved sci-fi and time travel stuff. And it's another episode that just merges those two and makes it a lot of fun. It's never going to be like, it's not considered a classic. It's not something that people remember particularly fondly. And that kind of makes me sad because this is still a very watchable TV series.
That's the thing, isn't it? Your favourite meal doesn't necessarily have to be a really expensive, fancy meal as long as it's something you enjoy.
So that's another episode. We're a quarter of the way through, and I'm taking a rest from main host duties for the next 2, and it's Carl taking over. So we'll be looking at episode 3 with Carl at the helm, and should be fun.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Oh, I can't wait.
So, Carl, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, because last episode I plugged Twitter, I'll plug my Instagram this time. So you can find me at Instagram at I am Mr. Carl, or you can find all my other bits and bobs at allmylinks.com/Mr. Carl.
And what about yourself, Matt?
So yeah, you can find me everywhere at Pick a Disc, but I'm going to use this opportunity to plug something else. We made this adjacent podcast. It's not on the We Made This Podcast Network, but one of the hosts is a host of one of our fellow shows. So the Red and Buried podcast is hosted by Frankie and Sarah. Frankie is hosting with a podcaster called Adam Roach, the Labours of Hercule podcast, which covers every episode of the TV show Poirot. Yeah, so that's just recently starting at the time recording. So if you're into kind of Poirot, because I can never pronounce the name right, yeah, give that one a listen, because Frankie's one of our friends at the We Made This Podcast Network, and we're going to give that a quick plug for her.
So we're actually recording these episodes when we can, so this will probably go out 6 months after we've recorded it. So Labours of Hercule probably has like fuck tons of episodes by now, but do check it out because, you know, Poirot's cool and Frankie's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking for me, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at MarkAdamsHC. The HC actually stands for Humanist Celebrant, which is my job. And, you know, if you need a ceremony, get in touch. I won't give you a discount or anything, but get in touch because I'm good at what I do. And yeah, I'm much better at Twitter than I am at Instagram because Instagram is like Twitter on hard mode. So thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Shipwrecked and Comatose. And until next time,
Damn it, Slade!
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast Network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at wemadethispod.
Do you like music and do you like podcasts? Chances are you like music podcasts. Take this one for example, Pick a Disc. I'm Matt Latham, and every fortnight a guest comes on to Pick a Disc to talk about an album for any reason that they want to. We'll talk about the album as a whole, we talk about the songs, we talk about any personal stories about the album, and if they've ever seen the band live, and all sorts of other crazy tangents. And if at any point any of that made you want to listen to Pick a Disc, then you can find us on your podcast apps of choice or on the Facebooks and Twitters and Instagram under Pick a Disc. We're also on the We Made This Podcast Network on wemadethisnetwork.com and on Twitter at we_made this. Goodbye.